hearing this echo. That's coming from your phone, Ms. V. It's yours? Okay. Let us stand for the invocation and pledge of allegiance. Ms. V, would you please give us another invocation?
Let us pray. Dear God, we thank you, Lord, for bringing us to the table once again to discuss the business that you've placed before us. We invite your presence and ask that you bless us according to your according to our needs. We know that this earth is yours and the fullness thereof. We just thank you for blessing us with a portion of it. We ask that you help us to be good stewards of what you've blessed us with, and help us to take a real close look at our budget and to be fair and equitable in everything that we do. And help us that everything we do it in love. These are all blessings we thank and ask in your name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we move on with the agenda, I have contacted the solicitor. He's on his way back since there were some questions that came up after he left. So he will be back. He said it'd take him about 10 minutes to get here. So that was a little while ago. Mrs. Blannon, is there any changes or additions to the agenda?
And number 4, under new business, city county ordinance, consideration of city county ordinance number 2686, boards and commissions. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we accept the amended agenda.
It's been moved and properly seconded that we approve the amended agenda. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? May I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes from our regular meeting of Tuesday, June the 9th?
Commissioner Bree. I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of June the 9th.
It's been moved. Mr. Baker, seconds. It's been moved and properly seconded that we approve the minutes of our regular meeting for Tuesday, June the 9th. All in favor? All opposed? The minutes are approved. There are no land use matters. The new business, resolution number 2005.
Mr. Chairman, I'll introduce the resolution if I may. We've covered this a little while ago in our budget discussion. The request before Sumter County tonight is from the school district is for $1,537,851. That is phase 1 of their 3-year phased approach for additional positions. The two options that we see before council, and unlike previous years where millage was asked, we've basically been asked to equate millage to this request. Again, these are all estimates based on best information provided to us by finance and other resources. But the request before for the $1.5 million, if it's all in mills, that would be a 5.3 mil increase. If it's mills plus what we project to be in growth in our value, which is what the county does for its budget request, the request would be for 3.3 mil increase, equate to $1.5 million. That's all I have, sir.
Okay. Okay, just for your information, everyone, Mr. Baton has recused himself from this part of the discussion about the school district's budget. Joe, can you take that down? We don't need that. What is the pleasure of council?
I'm not sure that I understand the two proposals.
Mr.
We
Mixon,
were having some issues with the sound. Let me ask you. Mr. Administrator, can you hear?
Yes, ma'am, I can.
Mr. McGaney, he can hear you from this one.
Okay.
Can you?
I think you can hear me from here.
Yes, I can. To clarify, the request from the school district is for $1,537,851. That's the request. Unlike previous years where they would just ask for millage to cover their request, what they've asked us to do is for a dollar amount. So staff has gone through the process of identifying one, what we believe the school district's mill value is, and two, what we anticipate the growth in the tax base will be. So that's kind of what we've done with our budget. You know, we projected so much in tax growth, and then we've come up with a mill value to balance our budget. So there's two ways to look at this. One, if you're not looking at it, if you're not considering what what we anticipate the growth to be in their tax base, their request is for 5.3 mills to address the $1.5 million request. If council wants to consider what we expect, and again, it's just an estimate, but what we expect to be just over $588,000 in growth, the balance needed in mills would be 3.3 mills to equate to the $1.5 million request.
Gary, I got one quick question. Their bonds, have they issued bonds this year? Are their bonds going to affect the homeowners, the taxpayers this year?
I'm
Did we
not
ever
aware
get an answer from that?
I'm not aware of that, Councilman Baker. They actually do that. You're talking about the debt millage?
Yep, yeah.
They actually do that after our budget approval normally.
So they could approve a $20 million bond, and it would certainly affect the homeowners by 9 or 10 mills, because homeowners will pay the millage on that bond indebtedness.
On debt millage, yes, sir.
Along with businesses and industries.
Right, but I'm not aware. They've not.
So they haven't told you anything considering about how much bonded?
No, sir.
Okay.
What would be the pleasure of council?
So the 3.3 mil is what you expect, Mr. Administrator, in order to honor this request? Is that what you're saying?
No.
Well, what I'm saying is if council, like we do with our budget, the county's budget, we actually build in a dollar amount of what we think our tax base, basically what our mill values have gone up. So our tax base has gone up by a certain amount. 1.5% is what we're calculating for us. And if you use that same calculation for the school district, 1.5% growth, we expect that's going to generate about $588,000. So if you take the 588 off of the $1.5 million request, they're still going to need 3.3 mills, again, approximately 3.3 mills to address their request.
Did you do any calculations, so because we're gonna be making a decision for everyone. And the general public usually likes to know how these figures would really impact them. And we usually use like $100,000 value. And I know that these are like non-owner occupied dwellings or whatever. But how, what can we show the taxpayers that how this would actually impact them if we were to indeed honor the request from the school district.
Yes, ma'am. I'll ask Kelsey if she would chime in. I know that she ran some calculations on, and I want to say it was $200,000 businesses and non-owner occupied homes. Kelsey, can you address that?
Yes, so I did that on the homeowners, not the business. So we didn't do anything for the 3.3 mills for the school district. I had done that for the loss factor and for the mill increase for the county and the fire districts. But I can.
It should be pretty similar as far as the
Yeah.
100,000 on $100,000 business per se. Of course, we know businesses are 100,000, but on a $100,000 business, one meal would raise taxes by how much? I think that's the question Ms. McGaney has.
Yes, it is.
That's $6 per 100
So
$6 per 100,000.
per meal.
that's $6 per meal.
But if you're talking $100,000 business, you must be talking a road.
Roadside, that's right.
I mean, because you ain't gonna find a small business that ain't worth $1 million probably.
About right.
Y'all, in my mind, we need to do something for the school district because this thing is getting cumulative. You know, as many times as we kick this can down the road, it just means that much more the next time. And
If I could interject on that then, and yes, for the last 3 years or whatever, we have not given them an increase. But somehow or another, they've ended up with a $5 million surplus at the end of the year. And they're projecting, as of the end of April, $3.2 million surplus. There's the money right there.
I mean, we're dipping into our reserve just to balance our budget. I don't understand, you know, I don't know.
The funding for all those teachers that they say they had to lay off because of the big financial snafu, that money's still there. They were paying those teachers then, and they haven't rehired, so they say those positions, but that money's still there. And last year they requested $1.5 million or whatever last year, and they end up with $5.5 million surplus. What kind of fool would I look like? That's been the same thing year after year.
is Jennifer still on?
See, she's dialed in.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I'm gonna get a second or not, but I would say let's fund the schools according to what they asked for. And that's my motion.
And Ms. Gann, can you repeat that motion?
My motion is to fund the schools in the amount that they're requesting.
Now, are you saying you want the 5.3 mils?
No, that's 3.3.
3.3. I'll second it. Any discussion? It's been moved and properly seconded that we fund the school district with a 3.3 mil increase. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And was that you, Mr. Sumter? That's
Yes, sir.
all opposed? Mr. Baker, Mr. Byrd, and Mr. Edens. You say no, right?
Okay, so what is the compromise? We're at a stalemate, so what is the compromise?
There's no stalemate, it dies.
It does, but it's a stalemate. So what is the compromise, colleagues?
Ms. McGaney is asking if there's a compromise.
No.
I would be willing to look in September and see what's happening with all this money coming in from the state. But right now, until I know that, I'm not willing to raise taxes right now.
Can we look at it in September?
Yeah, we can.
I mean, I'm asking Gary and Jonathan shaking his head yes. Okay. It's not too late if we go back at and revisit this in September.
Especially if the state is getting ready to issue some funding to them in September. I think, maybe that'll help with their request, and maybe it won't. And maybe if it won't, maybe we do need to look at it again. But at that point, I might be willing to look at it. But until I know what the state is going to put out there, I'm really would rather wait till September to visit this again.
Okay, Mr. Bryan, if I'm not mistaken, if it's a 3-3 tie, the motion dies, correct? Mr. Bryan? If it's a 3-3 tie, the motion dies, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct. Have to have a majority to pass.
Yeah, we can, that's it. By Robert's rules, that's it. So we just move on to the next item on the agenda. And let it be noted that it was 3 yes and 3 no. And by Robert's rules, the motion dies. Next item on the agenda is first reading of ordinance number 2930. Mr. Bryan.
Mr. Chair, members of council, you have before you the first reading on an ordinance that would allow a question to go on the ballot. It's a referendum question, and the purpose of it would be to allow the voters to decide whether grocery stores and convenience stores could sell beer and wine for off-premises consumption on Sunday. The voters would have to pass it, and this ordinance would allow the voter registration and election commission to put that question on the ballot as a referendum. Now, the way it's worded makes it sound like it's only 24 hours at a time. But in my conversations with the people over at Department of Revenue and the alcohol beverage licensing, they've indicated to me that this question that is on this ordinance is the question that comes straight out of the statute. And if this question passes at the referendum in November, then grocery stores and convenience stores, which currently have a 6-day license, would be able to apply for a 7-day license. And so they'd be able to sell beer and wine for off-premises consumption 7 days a week. That concludes my presentation. I'll be glad to answer questions.
Any questions or comments before I call for the motion?
Motion to carry for first reading.
Thank you, Mr. Sumter. Mr. Baton has comment.
And I realize that we want to put this on referendum and have the citizens to vote for it. And I agree that the citizens should have input.
Gene's been muted.
Yeah, Gene's muted, man.
Yeah. Okay, it's unmuted.
Okay, let me start all over again, please. I don't have any problem with putting this on the referendum. because I feel that the citizens should have some input on this matter. But as I said, being that we're in the Bible Belt and what we went through to get the blue law changed, I feel that this should be a decision that county council can make. And the reason I say that is because we have about 1/3 of our citizens of Sumter County that already have access to alcohol, beer, and wine on Sunday. And those are military personnel and their dependents. So I'm just wondering why we want to put this on referendum when we as the county council can pass this ourselves. That's my question.
Mr. Brown, maybe saying too, can we pass this ourselves? I don't think so.
Mr. Chairman, according to the statute, the only way this can pass is by referendum. County council under the statute does not have the authority to pass this and approve this by itself. Now, there's another way to get a referendum, that's by petition, but the county council does have the authority to authorize a referendum. But absent the referendum, there will be no Sunday sales of beer and wine for off-premises consumption.
Any other comments, questions? I think I heard a motion earlier.
I make a motion that we approve Jonathan, what is it you just wrote up?
Well, it's the first reading on ordinance.
2930.
Yeah, I make a motion, we approve first reading on that ordinance.
Second.
It's been motioned by Mr. Baker.
Jim, you're muted.
It's been moved by Mr. Baker, seconded by Mr. Sumter, that we approve first reading on ordinance number 2930. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of passing first reading on ordinance number 2930, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ms. McGaney is a nay. So the ordinance passes. Okay, Mr. Bryant, City County Ordinance number 2686.
Okay, this is the item that was added to the agenda. Last week, the city council passed another emergency ordinance, and it has 2 paragraphs. The first paragraph says that there will be no meetings or hearings of city boards and commissions, and they're postponed to August 15th, 2020. But then there's a second paragraph that allows them to happen under certain conditions, and those conditions are if the city manager determines administratively in his discretion and on advice of the city staff, for its boards and commissions, that the public health concerns can be reasonably addressed and reasonable social distancing practices are available and followed, then the meetings and public hearings can be held. That applies to the city commissions and boards. And then there's a final sentence in that second paragraph that says, unless the county by formal action objects, this provision shall also apply to all joint boards and commissions of the city and county, for example, the Planning Commission and the Board of Zoning Appeals. So if the council is of a mind to object, then you'd want to have a resolution, a motion, a second passing saying you object. But if you don't object, if you consent, it might be just as well to have a motion saying that you consent. That way it's very clear there's no objection. That would be my advice, is to pass on the question one way or the other. you object or you don't object. We're glad to take any questions.
Any questions, Mr. Bryant? Everybody understand it? All we have to do is not object and it moves on.
That's correct. Technically, you don't have to do anything
Right.
unless you want to object. If you want to object, then you would need to take some kind of formal action, like a vote, a resolution saying you object
Everybody's in
to.
agreement to just let it ride?
You may just let it ride.
So basically, the city administrator makes the call on everything. And at that point, if we disagree with him, we can object to it.
Well, I think the time to object would be now.
Object.
I don't think we're going to do this on an ad hoc basis. You know, I think the time to object to allowing the city manager to determine that the meetings can go forward is now.
Yeah, I would just as soon let our administrator have some say so in it also. I mean, I don't know.
I'll make a motion to object.
It's
So
been
making the motion to object is saying exactly what? We are not gonna approve this, or we're gonna object if we
How it was
can
written.
object.
Mhm.
The motion to object would be the formal action to say that the second paragraph of that ordinance, which would allow meetings if the city manager was satisfied it could be done safely. So that would end the meeting of any joint boards and commissions of the city and county until August the 15th, 2020.
Yeah,
no,
if I remember right, I don't think they have a lot of on their agendas for July anyway. July is pretty much a dead month. Anyway,
The planning commission's meeting tomorrow.
yeah, that's why so if we object, that means, Mr. Bryant, that they can't meet?
That's correct. That's correct.
Well, I don't think that's a good decision, y'all.
I withdraw. I just don't like the, Gary not having the say in it.
Especially since they're joint, I mean, but like Charles says, there ain't a lot going on in July, so it's just till what? A month.
Yes.
I'll make a motion that we approve.
Okay, I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved.
We don't need a motion.
We don't need a motion. We're just gonna let it ride this week.
Just,
Oh, we're not voting on it?
No, we're not.
Okay,
We only vote on it if we contest it, so we're not contesting it.
okay.
Okay. All right, Mr. Bryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Under old business, third reading of ordinance 2926, Little John Lane.
Yes, so this is third reading to convey what we call a paper street to the adjoining property owners. No changes since second reading and public hearing.
Move for approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we have third reading on ordinance 2926. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? 2926, third reading is passed. Third reading on ordinance 2927, which is the general obligation bonds.
Mr. Chairman, council members, good evening again. This is our better known as our capital bond ordinance. It goes in conjunction with our budget ordinance. This is for $3.5 million, which will fit us in with our 15 mil that we've got allocated for our capital bond request. The major items in the $3.5 million, of course, are the vehicles for the sheriff's department, along with the equipment that goes inside the vehicles. We also have a trash compactor for the landfill, portion of that to be paid for out of this bond, and another portion of it to be paid for with the solid waste fee. We have the life packs for the ambulance this year. And we also have radios for the detention center, as well as new software for the sheriff's department for the E911 system to bring them up to date. Those are the major parts, major items, purchases in this capital bond ordinance. That's all I have, sir.
Okay, any questions or comments, Mr. Mixon? I have a motion to approve third reading of ordinance 2928.
I'll second it.
I'm sorry, 2927, I misspoke. Okay, it's been moved and properly seconded that we have third reading of ordinance, the bond issuance ordinance 2927. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, third reading is passed. Now come down to the budget ordinance. And as I said, I have asked our solicitor to come back since there were some questions that came up. Plus, he was not able to be heard very well. Mr. Finney is now here. Mr. Edens, I think you have some questions.
I'm sorry, what's that?
I said, I have asked the solicitor to come back. He is here. I think you had some questions.
I did ask about the two positions that he said that they had left him. So has he rehired those two, or are they included in the request?
I can hear you. Can y'all hear? Can y'all hear?
No.
No. Hold on.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
We can hear, but there's an echo.
All right.
Okay, let me turn mine down.
So the situation is in January of this year, two of my senior solicitors left the office. So we have not paid their budget, their salary to them from January to the present day. Those two slots are still on my budget line to be filled, and I'm actively seeking replacement for those two lawyers, because when they left, each of them had 400 or more open cases that have to be accounted for. And I don't have enough lawyers to move those cases to another lawyer. So we're looking to replace those slots with two lawyers. The request that I made today is for two additional lawyers to reduce the caseload down to 300 to 350 cases for every lawyer in my office. Those two lawyers would be new. They would be given some of the cases that are now being handled by lawyers who are carrying 400 to 500 cases. That way we can talk to victims quicker, we can get the cases ready quicker, and we can move them out of the jail and out of our courtrooms quicker. I'm also asking for the victim advocate and the investigator slot. That's 4 new slots. That's what the new money is for. The money that was budgeted last year for those two lawyers that left is still in the budget that I'm trying to rehire for, or get new hires for.
I got a quick
Is there a question on that?
No, I've got another question, if you don't mind. These lawyers in these cases, is that over Clarendon, Sumter, and Lee?
No, so this is all Sumter.
All Sumter?
This is all Sumter. Clarendon, Lee, and Williamsburg have their own budget. They have their own line items in the budget. For example, right now, I have 2 lawyer slots in Williamsburg, but I only have 1 lawyer that's currently there because one guy retired to Texas. So I'm talking to lawyers right now to try to fill that other slot in Williamsburg because I have an open slot there.
Okay, it seems like last
And I'm
year,
not requesting money from Sumter County, but those slots.
okay,
All of these personnel will work in Sumter and help us move the Sumter cases.
but it seemed like last year when we talked about the investigators, you did say that the investigators we would be hiring would also be used in the other counties. Is that
No,
correct still?
No, sir. The
Okay.
investigators, I have approached the other county councils to give me the new money to hire an investigator because we don't have an investigator in any other office. We only have 1 investigator in Sumter. And that is not enough because we have too many cases, too much court. We need to have another investigator to help us prepare the cases and make sure that the cases are ready to go to court so the lawyers can prep them and get them ready to court. And that is a benefit to everyone because investigators don't cost as much as lawyers.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Finney?
I have a comment.
Okay, Mr. Bacon.
Attorney Finney, in the absence of not having investigators, who's doing the investigating work?
Well, here's what happens. When the police bring the file to us, it's our job to get it ready for court. But the police have gone on to work other cases, and we have to take a case that might have occurred 6 months ago and get it ready for court. That's what our investigators help us do. The investigators are tasked with other office duties as well. For example, we have to have criminal records run for every juror who is summoned to come and serve on the jury panel. So when we have a week of jury trials, we have to have like 200 criminal records run on the computer. Right now, I've got 3 different people doing that. They are not, some of them are not even in our office, they're in our program over the pretrial. If I have another investigator, we get that done quicker. Yeah. Running criminal records is something we have to do for all our criminal cases before we can resolve the case in terms of somebody getting probation or somebody going to prison. The investigators can do a lot to help us get trials ready because they can find witnesses. I can't call Sheriff and say, go tell one of your officers to go find Mr. Smith who saw this robbery. That has to be done by our office. So I need investigators to go out and help find witnesses, help make sure that the evidence that's been collected by law enforcement is where it should be. We have body cams now on everything. We have store video cameras. We have a lot of evidence that needs to be handled. And right now, my lawyers are having to handle it because we don't have anybody else in the office who can handle it.
And that's the point I wanted to make, is the fact that because you don't have investigators, sometimes you're putting this on other staff, but you're also putting it on lawyers who you're paying more money than they should be handling that 400 caseload that they have. And that's the point I wanted to make. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments for the solicitor?
Solicitor, when you left, we were talking about how we might be able to, find in our budget, the revenue, and of course, and I emphasized this earlier that raising the millage is something that we try to shun, especially in this economic situation. And you explained very eloquently that you've been asking for help for years, and that you've been here for 10 years and have not seen any increase. And of course, that does not fall on deaf ears. But I wanted to ask again, is there anything within the request that you can crunch? Is there anything that you can maybe sacrifice to help us meet you halfway?
Well, I certainly will take whatever you can give me. I understand that this is a tough situation. But I understand that I've heard that before, and I don't know when the situation's going to be better. Here's what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid that just like this virus has come in and shut us down, we're going to have some serious repercussions. The jail is going to be impacted if I can't move my cases. The court system, whatever it returns to normal, is going to be impacted by the fact that I don't have the staff, I don't have the workers to get the work out. And I don't want that to look bad on my office, because I made the request and I know what I need, and I don't really need a half a measure, I need a full measure. But if I could get the investigator, if I could get the big map, if I could get one new attorney, it would help me a great deal. I will leave it to you. But as you remember, and this is just, hopefully you will take this with respect. As I see this county growing and trying to be all it can be, raising the mill is only going to produce good results. It's already been seen that police officers need help. It's been seen that the school district needs help. I'm an agency just as important as they are that needs help. And I want to ask you to be generous, because this is not frivolous. I'm driving cars in my office that were given to me 10 years ago. I haven't asked for a car. I haven't asked for, you gave me a new courthouse. I'm pleased, but what I need is workers who can get the work out.
We hear you, and that is so well received, and I thank you for that. And I'm asking you that not so much for myself, because I'm ready and want to give you what you asked for. But with this economy, and I know I'm just one, and as we make our deliberations, we do need some choices to consider. And we just thank you for everything that you do, and I just hope that this economy will get better. It won't be difficult for us to allow, and it's not giving you, it's doing what is just right.
And one more thing, yes. The state of South Carolina sends a lot of money to Sumter County to help with my office. My salary is paid by in Columbia. We get domestic violence money from Columbia. We get drug court money from Columbia. All of the things that we're trying to do, we don't come to you to ask for help, because we are being able to draw on other sources.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Yes. Thank you for all that you do. Oh, well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Council.
Okay, Mr. Finney, thank you for coming back too.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Mixon, where do we stand?
Mr. Chair, council needs to make a decision on that request. And then obviously we can move forward with our budget request, or I can go ahead and present what we have from the staff's recommendation for a budget request. It's up to you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, excuse me, I think that our administrator and his finance department can take a look at the request and see what we can do, considering those options that we did before about the infrastructure fund, not bothering our rainy day funds, the fund balance at all. But I do feel like we have some wiggle room in our infrastructure fund because of the way it accumulates. If he did not If they were accumulated from, um, taxes and not fees, then that would be a revenue stream. But of course, without ingenuity, we have funds for economic development, which is great. But, economic development has done us very well, and we won't suffer if we allow some funds to come from the economic, even if what I'm saying is decrease the percentage of those fee and lieu of taxes that go into the infrastructure fund, so that we can have a larger working revenue source in order to do these things that we need to do.
Vivian, if I may, when we do that, we're taking money from the school district.
And tell me how.
Because they get that 80%. We move it to 25, then they get part of that 7, then it goes from 80% to 75%. So
Okay,
I would think they would be the first to object.
$88,000. That's not a big chunk of money.
I'm just telling you, the school district is the one that probably will object to it more than anybody. If we go over 20%.
And all of those things, everything that we have on the table tonight needs some careful consideration. We were not able to pass the school budget either. And so we've got to take another look at that and what the solicitor is asking for. And what I'm sensing, and I know it's not always good to go by what we're sensing, we need actual authentic numbers and information. So what I'm asking for is true transparency. If we have to get them to the table and ask them to open up the books and show us all the grants and crevices where everything is, so that we can make an informed decision, then I'm ready.
But Mr. Mixon, I think that the point is we're at the drop dead point now, right? We need to make a decision. We don't have the time to go back and do any more studying as to where we can pull this. I would like to make a motion that we give the solicitor half of what he's asking for, which is 0.7 more mills, and add that to the 1.9 and increase the millage to 2.6 mills in order to give the solicitor's office half of what he needs. And I'm gonna put that motion on the table. It's been moved and properly seconded that we raise the millage from 1.9 mills to 2.6. Any questions or discussion?
I think that needs to come from the finance people. They're not considered, with my original question, without raising the millage, even trying to raise the millage to meet our law enforcement, and we got overwhelming approval for that. Yeah, but we don't know what this economy is going to do, and to raise it to 2.6, I don't know. That might hurt. Well, and we're trying to, keep the burden off our taxpayers. $388,000. I really do feel that we can find it within our budget without raising a millage.
But Ms. McGaney, that is a recurring cost.
It is a recurring, but it won't be a recurring cost if we change the way we accrue our infrastructure fund.
But then Mr. Baker also pointed out that if we do that, that's going to be pulling money away from the school district. Well, it's been moved and seconded on my motion that we raise the millage to 2.6. I'm gonna go ahead and carry that motion and let it fall where it may. All in favor of raising the mills from 1.9 to 2.6, please say aye. Aye. All opposed?
No.
The ball's in y'all's court.
And I make a motion that we direct the county administrator and his finance department to go back into the budget and find a way to approve these two requests with the balanced budget that they gave us today and come back with another balanced budget without an additional millage increase and granting at some level of funds to the solicitor. I know that's a long motion, but that's a motion.
Okay, you heard Ms. McGain's motion. Do I have a second?
Again, I couldn't hear your motion clearly. Could you repeat that, please?
For us to direct the county administrator and his finance department to go back to the drawing board and present before council a balanced budget similar to the one that was presented today, but just adding in a level of support to the solicitor.
Did you hear that, Mr. Sumter? You're breaking up, Mr. Sumter.
I'd second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we direct the county administrator to go back and come back with another one. Mr. Edens, you got something to say?
Just if it weren't the 11th hour, I would be in favor of it. If we were talking weeks ago, but we don't have time right now. We've got to pass this budget, and I don't know that the staff has any ideas where they would come up with it just out of the blue. So, no. Thank you.
Okay, it's been moved by Ms. McGaney and seconded by Mr. Sumter. All in favor? All opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Hey,
Mr. Chairman, may I say something, please?
Sure.
You know, I've been on this council since 2005, and some of these members on here that I look at, been on more than I have. But you know, we always talk about millage and raising millage because we have a valid request from whoever to raise millage. We always get this thing that the citizens can't afford it, the citizens can't do this. We don't want to put this on citizens. Now we're talking about this time when we had this pandemic. Oh, we're in a crisis. It'll be unfair to raise millage now. We can never do this. We can never do this. Well, let me say this. We say we don't want to raise millage in bad times, but we haven't raised millage in good times. When we had a good time, we didn't want to raise millage. So this thing about now, today, because of the pandemic, because of this and that, that's a lot of baloney. We just have people on county council who don't want to raise millage no matter what. So let's face it, let's be realistic and stop all of this hullabaloo about raising millage during bad times, because we never even raised millage during good times. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hayden.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the budget as presented by the administrator with a 1.9 mil increase.
Second.
It's been, I can't even think straight. It's been moved by Mr. Baker and seconded by Mr. Edens that we approve third reading on our budget ordinance number 2928. Any discussion?
That does have a 1.9 mil increase.
I don't know, I think we still got the mills at 1.5.
1.9.
1.9.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair, just for clarification, it is what was proposed for third reading was a balanced budget at $51,163,000 $769, which included a 1.9 mil increase.
So that does not include the millage for the school.
No, that was on a totally separate reading as a resolution, sir. This the county's budget only.
Okay. So when will we approve millage for the school?
That vote's already been taken.
That's what I'm saying.
It failed.
Sir, if I may add, we've already taken care of the school district and we voted on it. And in fact, we probably would have approved it if we had 4 votes, but we had one council person who recused themselves, which caused us not to have any additional money for the school district. I have no further comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I love that.
Be that as it may, it's been moved.
You know, during budget time, and it's just this council person, I always, you know, I had this desire that we could be on a united front and everybody just agrees to approve the budget. And I know that it's this way this time and may have been in the past too because of, you know, the economy and everything. But as I think about the entire budget, our employees are the ones that have made a sacrifice. They are going to be without their normal 3% cost of living allowance. And that means that we are denying them of that. And we hear what our school is asking for. We hear what our solicitor is asking for. And I made a bid for transparency so that we can, you know, a lot of times, you know, human nature tells us to ask for more than what we want. And so, but if we have transparency to see exactly what they wanted to do with it, then we can, you know, still make an even better informed decision, because I know we asked for more and hoping that at least, you know, you would get some. So in saying that, we have an obligation to fund the county's operations. And in my opinion, the solicitor's office is one, just like our law enforcement officers, that's our obligation. Detention center, our obligation. Every department is our obligation. But we divvy out a lot of funds to other agencies, and we haven't even mentioned any possibilities of maybe increasing them just a little in order to allow for this revenue that we need to satisfy the areas that are being requested. We have done it in the past. We have done even as much as 15%. 1%, 2%, 3% may not hurt, but could give us what we need without having to increase millage. And I for one, and pardon me, Councilor Baton, I just never did like to put the tax burden on the taxpayers. I just don't like to do that. You know, we have a budget of over $50 million, and there's gotta be a way that we can find the revenue to do the things that we need to do with that big pot of money. That's all I have to say.
Well, I want to make a statement. I have been in a lot of discussions with Mr. Mixon and Ms. Andrews. They have cut this budget every way but sideways to come up. They have cut out other departments. They've cut this budget so close. I made a proposal to come up with a compromise and it was denied. If there's no further discussion, it's been moved and seconded that we pass the budget as presented by our finance department and our administrator with a 1.9 mil increase, which will give the increases that we fought so hard for our deputy sheriffs and for our detention centers. Without any further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Budget ordinance passes with a 1.9 mil increase. Mr. Nixon.
Chair, thank you very much. Before we move off of this topic, I believe me, I understand the conflicts by council. It's difficult. We all know we have limited amount of resources to accomplish the things that we would like to accomplish, things we need to accomplish, and quite honestly, the things we're responsible to accomplish in our community. We have, and I thank you for the comments. You were a little bit closer to it. You saw some of the things that Ms. Andrews and I and staff were working through trying to make this balanced budget. But I think you touched on it. There are some very, very positive things in this budget, things that I thought and to start would be very challenging and quite honestly, almost impossible. But the fact that you were able to honor the commitment to our public service, our public safety officers is huge. That's not been done in any time in recent years. The fact that you were able to work with our detention officials and do what they need to do for them to try to put them in a better place to maintain or recruit, maintain is huge. And the fact that you were able to somehow or another support and come up with a 2% COLA for our workforce at a time when I quite honestly thought it was going to be very, very difficult. So there are a lot of good things in this budget. Honestly, we can't, it's difficult to do it all. And I will commit to work with our solicitor through the year, possibly look at some of his other funds and see if there's a way to make some adjustments somewhere in his budget that might be able to accommodate some of his requests. Maybe not all of it, but some of it. And if there's opportunities to do more, we will, because we do recognize the need there and understand our responsibility to the court system. We'll continue to work through this process. And as always, thank council for your continued support.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could make one quick comment. I agree with Ms. McGaney. Let's look at these other agencies. If we need to, I mean, that's $3 million that we're doling out that we don't have to dole out. And if, you know, we need to cut back on some of these agencies that we have been funding that we don't have to fund, maybe that's a stream of income we could find for the solicitor or whoever. So anyway, just wanted to make that comment.
Great idea.
Thank you. It's only $388,000.
No, sorry. Mr. Paul for the approval of the budget. I just raised my hand. I just know that I concur with approval of the budget. So, even though I didn't say that, I raised my hand.
I didn't say anything. I approve it too because I want us to approve it, but we have to approve it. But I understand the county administrator saying that, you know, as time goes, they'll be able to look at those things. And but I'm not satisfied that we haven't made any that the school budget failed. What are we gonna do?
Yeah, I'm not true. I'm not 100%.
All right. Yo, you beat this horse enough tonight.
I need to ask somebody. County administrator, what do we do?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question if there was one.
She says, Mr. County Administrator, what do we do?
Well,
Already said it all.
the budget can be amended at any time by
Yes.
approval of council. So yeah, if we want to go back now and go look at what Mr. Baker's talking about, find some funds there and come back, we can amend the budget. It's just that simple.
Yes, sir, we can. 3 readings, we can amend the budget.
Just decide where we're gonna cut.
You want to cut these other agencies? Let's look at it. We cut them all 20% if you want to.
Great idea.
I didn't say 20 now, Artie.
Well, 15, whatever you need. I mean, I'm willing to cut these. I mean, I think these other agencies are important, but
So that's
are
why,
they more important than the solicitor? I don't know. You know, to me, they're not.
yes, but what I'm saying is that, you know, when times are bad, we don't want to put the burden on the taxpayers. We go within what we already have and ask everybody to make a sacrifice. Just like our workforce is making a sacrifice by not being able to get a 3% cost of living allowance, and everybody has to make some type of sacrifice and not increase tax.
You know, just
I
like,
agree, Vivian. And maybe we can revisit this if y'all are willing to look at these other agencies. I certainly would be willing to do that.
okay, we can do that. Mr. Mixon has already said that he's going to work with the solicitor. We have beat this horse
I
during
agree.
stuff today. You
My
know,
mouth is shut.
that's a first. Okay, come now, Mr. Baden, you got a report from a meeting that you attended?
Yes, Chairman, thank you. It wasn't a meeting that I attended, it was a conference call that we had. I participated in with the Sumter grant NAACP. As a result of what's going on in our country and the world, we were looking at discussing systemic racism, which is institutional racism, and how it impacts on our county. When we looked at our healthcare, we looked at our judicial system, as well as we looked at our educational system. And I just wanted to make a statement regarding our workforce that we have, which is still is affected by institutional racism. Since becoming a member of Sumter County Council in 2005, I've watched and helped to prepare this county for future economic development. On October 6, 2011, our district efforts paid off when Continental Tire announced that they would build a $500 million state-of-the-art manufacturing tire facility in Sumter that will create 1,600 jobs, paying salaries above our median income. On that historic day, I said, as chairman of the county council, Continental clearly recognized that we have a skilled, dedicated, and loyal workforce that will help to make the company successful. That workforce allows us to put into is educated and trained in our public schools. Conversely, my message to my colleagues is if you support economic development in Sumter County, it is not enough to talk about it, you must walk the walk. So our children, our future workforce and leaders, help them to be the best that they can be. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baden. Any other comments on meetings from council? Hearing none. Ms. Blanding, monthly reports.
The only report.
Hold on, I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am, I can hear you.
The only report we have is, the package is the sheriff's monthly report, and it's in the Dropbox.
Okay. Mrs. Blanding said, if you didn't hear, the only monthly report that we have is the sheriff's report, and it is in the Dropbox. Mr. Mixon, you got anything else to say tonight?
Mr. Chair, just one last moment. As y'all know, it's common knowledge that the COVID cases continue to spike across our state, across the country, and quite honestly in our community. That's caused us to respond appropriately with changes in our operations. And at this time, I know Ms. Dennis is in the audience, and she's been our point of contact, our control point for the county, and doing a wonderful job for us as it relates to this issue. And I'd like for her to give a briefing or an update to council on our recent activities.
Ms. Dennis.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of council. I think Mr. Nixon said a lot.
Can y'all, excuse me, Ms. Dennis, can y'all hear Ms. Dennis?
Kinda.
No, they can't hear you.
I think Mr. Mixon said a lot, and as a result of the increases in the numbers in Sumter County, we have decided to, effective as of yesterday, replace all of our non-essential employees back on a modified schedule. And, we also changed the date for reopening to the general public from Monday, June 29th to July 20th. And, those areas will be updated on our website as well. But again, we have changed our reopening to the public from June 29th to July 20th. We've also started purchasing various items for our employees, such as masks, hand sanitizer, gloves, and other essential items that they will need, especially when we reopen to the public. I tentatively scheduled a Zoom meeting with the department heads this week, just to simply talk to them about the protocol as it relates to anyone who may come to work not feeling well, anyone who may call and state that they're not feeling well. And also how to handle a situation when an employee calls and tells them that they are tested positive. We've talked to them through email. So this week we're planning to do a Zoom meeting with all of the department heads, and once that meeting is completed, we're planning to send out information to all employees. We have also, in some of the buildings, we've also placed decals on the doors regarding the 6 feet apart. We are slowly but surely preparing ourselves for the opening to the public. We've purchased plexiglass for different offices and courtrooms as well. And we've also placed decals on the floors. And we're just doing various things trying to get all of our departments up and ready, especially for the reopening to the general public.
Okay.
And I would be more than happy to entertain
Any questions or comments for Ms. Dennis? Thank you, Ms. Dennis. Before I call for a motion to adjourn, I'd just like to say, I appreciate everybody's input and discussion concerning our budget. We don't always get what we want, but that's the vicissitudes of serving on county council. Secondly, I personally did not like this format tonight. I didn't vote for it to begin with because I thought this was too important a meeting to be held via Zoom. So I want Mr. Nixon and Ms. Blandon for the next meeting, if we have to have it at Patriot Hall so we can spread out, we will hopefully meet together rather than via this Zoom format. I just don't like this. And that's just my personal comment. Mr. Nixon, I hope you feel better. Get rid of that kidney stone. And with that being said, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All in favor? Aye. Everybody stay safe.